Okay, here we go, friends. Chapter 9, Mr. Tabby. They stood in a big, cold room. Sparkling cobwebs crisscrossed the high ceiling. Strips of peeling white paint hung from the walls as if something very large had been sharpening its claws. A faded sign stood on its side against the far wall next to the elevator. 2 doors flanked the room. "Please forgive the mess," the man said. "We have only been here just a few days. It is rather difficult to move an entire hospital." He nodded toward some moving boxes that were stacked in one corner. A pile of buttons lay in another corner next to a broom. The bird's cage was nowhere to be seen. "How come you need such a big place?" Ben asked. "Worms are pretty small." "We have one room for worms, and the other rooms are for other things." The man held out his hand. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Tabby. I am in charge of identifying and registering each and every patient." He shook Pearl's hand, then he shook Ben's. His sharp fingernails pricked Ben's skin. "And you are?" "I am Pearl Petal." "I'm Ben Silverstein." "Well, Pearl Petal and Ben Silverstein, before we proceed, you must sign this." And the man pulled a piece of paper from his vest pocket. "I'm not exposed to sign anything without my mother or father reading it first," Pearl exclaimed. She refused to take the pen from Mr. Tabby. "I signed some papers once, and then I ended up with a big satellite dish on our roof, and I was grounded for like 2 whole weeks. No computer, no candy, no nothing." The man wiggled the pen. "You cannot go into the identification room if you do not sign the paper. If you do not sign this paper, I will take the hatchling and leave you here." "I'll sign it," Ben said, and he handed the cookie tin to Pearl. Then he read the paper while Pearl looked over his shoulder. "By signing this paper, I promise that I will not blame Dr. Wu for any injuries that I might receive from an imaginary world or known world creature. Causes of injury may include, but are not limited to, biting, scratching, chewing, gnawing, venomous stinging, hypnotizing, tossing, igniting, crushing, stomping, impaling, gouging, shredding, and vaporizing. Signed." "Vaporizing? Oh, wait a minute. That sounds pretty dangerous," said Ben. "Oh, it is dangerous, extremely dangerous, and rather painful." Mr. Tabby pulled out a little device from his vest pocket and typed something on its keypad. "But according to my creature calculator, there are no vaporizing creatures currently in the hospital. The odds of you becoming vaporized today are 0. Lucky for you." "But what about all these other things?" Ben asked. "Shredding? I totally don't want to be shredded." "I think crushing sounds worse," Pearl said. Mr. Tabby frowned. "I cannot guarantee that you will be safe. That is why you must sign the paper." And he held out the pen. "You cannot accompany the hatchling to the identification room unless you sign. Both of you." Pearl signed. Ben signed. Mr. Tabby tucked the paper into his vest pocket. "Now, if you please." And all of a sudden, a roar filled the room, the kind of roar that should be capitalized and followed by at least 3 exclamation marks. "Roar!" It went on for a very long time, as if the creature making the sound had the largest lungs in the world. Cobwebs drifted down from the ceiling as if something stomped on the floor above. During the roar, Ben thought about all sorts of things. He thought that he would like to run to the opposite side of the room. He'd like to run all the way until he got back to his grandfather's house, actually. And then he thought that he shouldn't run because that would make him look like a chicken. But then he thought it was better to look like a chicken than to be stomped, crushed, or shredded. "What was that?" Pearl asked as the roar faded. I dare not say." Mr. Tabby smoothed out the front of his vest. "Now, on to our business." and he opened the door to the identification room and said to Ben, "Would you be so kind as to bolt the front door?" Mr. Pearl followed Mr. Tabby into the identification room, the cookie tin still in her hands. Ben hurried across the lobby. He grabbed the deadbolt, but it wouldn't budge. He didn't have deadbolts in his house in Los Angeles. Instead, there was a security pad that activated an alarm system. Ben pinched his fingers trying to slide the rusty bolt into place, and after a few tries, he simply gave up. The door was closed, and that was good enough. Besides, he didn't want to miss 1 second of whatever was going on in the other room. Chapter 9. The Wyvern. "Please set the patient on the identification table," Mr. Tabby said. The table sat in the middle of the cluttered room. A wide conveyor belt ran from one end of the table to a huge hole in the wall. The hole led into a tunnel of some sort. Mr. Tabby handed Ben and Pearl each a firefighter's helmet. "We must take precautions. Even a hatchling can produce quite a powerful flame." "Oh, it did," said Ben. "It almost fried my face." Mr. Tabby set the helmet on his head and then lowered the face shield. Ben and Pearl did the same thing. "Now, step away, please." And the kids stepped back as Mr. Tabby removed the lid of the cookie tin. The baby dragon arched its neck and turned its face, looking up at Mr. Tabby. The watery hiss emerged from its mouth, but no flame. Its head fell back onto the green-stained paper towels. Mr. Tabby removed the helmet. "There is no need for concern. It is too weak." Ben and Pearl took off their helmets and set them aside. Mr. Tabby slid on a pair of white gloves and then grabbed a pair of tweezers from the table drawer. "I thought it might be a bat," Ben said. "That is understandable. The color, the wings." And using tweezers, Mr. Tabby gently stretched out the bad wing. "But, just as I suspected, it is a wyvern. My nose is rarely wrong." "What's a wyvern?" Pearl asked. "A wyvern is a winged dragon with only 2 legs," Mr. Tabby said. "They appear in many medieval stories from the area of the known world called Wales. The wyvern is popular with knights in shining armor who often wore its image on their shields and on their coat of arms." Using the tweezers, he delicately uncurled the hatchling's tail. "This sort of dragon often has a barbed tail." "Can you fix it?" Ben asked. "The wing is easily mended, as is the puncture wound in the tail. Do you have any idea how it became injured?" "My grandpa's stupid cat caught it." Mr. Tabby narrowed his eyes. "Stupid cat? Stupid cat?" A growl arose in Mr. Tabby's throat. Ben thought that the stupid was a perfect way to describe a cat, along with mean, nasty, and rotten. He didn't like cats ever since the neighbor's cat ate his first hamster, and all that was left was the hamster's tail. "I don't like cats." Mr. Tabby's mustache flicked with annoyance. "My dear boy, did you ever think that maybe cats do not like you?" "The baby closed his eyes again," Pearl said, pointing. Mr. Tabby mumbled as he typed on his creature calculator. "Species, dragon. Breed, wyvern. Age, approximately 3 days. Is the other dragon its mother?" Pearl asked. "What other dragon?" "The one that Ben and I saw flying. The one that landed on the factory roof." "That is a bothersome question, and I shall ignore it. This hatchling was in our nursery. The cat must have gotten in somehow." "Maybe it was through one of those broken windows," Pearl said. Ben still couldn't believe that they were talking about dragons, real, live, fire-breathing dragons. "I don't understand something," he said. "If this is a worm hospital, how come you have a baby dragon in the nursery?" Another bothersome question. Mr. Tabby removed the gloves. The hatchling will need surgery to treat the broken wing and the cat bite. Can I have it back after the surgery? No, but if I gave the hatchling to you, I would be breaking the law, Mr. Tabby said. Creatures from the imaginary world are not allowed to live in the known world. Look what happened with the Loch Ness Monster. What? Pearl said with a gasp. You're telling us that the Loch Ness Monster is real? Again, I shall ignore that question. But the big dragon is living here, Ben pointed out, in the known world. The big dragon has Dr. Wu's permission to live here. Oh dear, I shouldn't have told you that. Mr. Tabby folded his arms and stared at the two kids who wore equal looks of surprise. Even if I agreed to give you the hatchling, which I wouldn't do, but even if I did, how would you take care of it? I don't know, said Ben with a shrug. I could keep it in my bedroom, Pearl said. I have a big bedroom. My dear girl, do you live in a castle? No, I live above the dollar store. Mr. Tabby raised a red eyebrow. The tiny creature that you see before you will grow to be 15 feet long with a 20-foot wingspan and a weight of 1 ton. When it reaches puberty, more barbs will sprout on its tail. Flames will shoot from its snout when it is frightened, angry, or simply bored. Unless the dollar store is made of stone, you will have constant visits from the fire department. And then there's the issue of feeding it. We can make dragon's milk, Ben said. We can use your recipe. The recipe will only help you for a few days. The milk must be served boiling hot, which is a very dangerous feat in its own. The hatchling will grow very quickly and will require fresh meat. Squirrels, rats, and rabbits will do it first. But a full-grown wyvern will eat a cow every day. Wow, Ben said. That's a lot of meat. Exactly. Mr. Tabby picked up the cookie tin and set it on the conveyor belt. I will send the wyvern into the surgery room. But you said that Dr. Wu is making a house call, Ben pointed out. So who is going to do the surgery? The splinting of a wing and the stitching of a wound are simple matters. He pressed the button and the conveyor belt began a steady roll, carrying the cookie tin and its occupant into the tunnel. Ben wanted to grab the tin and not let it go, but he knew that the baby dragon was going to get help. He and Pearl stood at the tunnel's entrance and watched until the little hatchling disappeared. I didn't even get a chance to hold it, Pearl said sadly. Goodbye, whispered Ben. Now I will escort the two of you from the building. Most certainly your parents are wondering about your absence. I'm supposed to go home and do chores, Pearl said. I'm afraid if I get in trouble, if... And just then an alarm rang and a nasal voice shot out of the speaker that was set high on the wall. Emergency code yellow, emergency code yellow, Sasquatch escape, all personnel needed immediately. Pearl and Ben shared a stunned look. Normally, someone shouting Sasquatch escape would have made Ben laugh, but a very few normal things had happened since he had moved to Buttonville. Oh dear, Mr. Tabby said. Well, no need to worry as long as the front door is bolted. We should have no cause for concern. Ben gulped. His mind raced to the front door and the rusty bolt. Emergency code red, emergency code red, the loudspeaker announced. All personnel needed immediately. Sasquatch has left the building. Until next time.